what is known as the upper room right after the resurrection. And Jesus, believe it or not, he stuck around for 40 extra days on planet Earth after he resurrected on the third day. And what he did was he began to share with his disciples some fascinating and incredible things about this kingdom of God thing, this spiritual kingdom that he was about to make happen, and that it was going to come to fruition. And after that 40-day Bible study, those 40 days that he spent with them, one of the disciples raised his hand and asked a very, very profound question. He asked a very unique question. He asked this in verse 6. All right, Lord, I appreciate all that you're saying. I'm paraphrasing here, but he asked a very unique question. He says, when are you going to restore, Lord, when are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel? Those guys knew nothing more than what God and what Jesus had revealed to them in the Gospels, which was, listen, man, I'm going to set up my kingdom on this planet. And those of us that have and believe this book, we know that Jesus is coming back someday. When he does come back, and I'm not talking necessarily for his church, but when what we refer to as the second coming of Christ, the whole purpose for the second coming of Christ is so that he could establish his kingdom on this earth. But what he says to them in verse number 8 is really profound. He says, and he starts talking about the Holy Spirit and the power of the Holy Spirit coming upon them. And he says, you guys, don't worry about all the craziness and all the things that you guys are going to get to be a part of, all the change and all the transition stuff that is going to play out as I lead you guys through this journey. He says, but I want you to embrace a very, very profound truth, and it's found in verse 8. He says this to them next. He says, I want you to be witnesses for me. And he tells them exactly where he desires them to be witnesses. He tells them to be witnesses in Jerusalem, in Judea, Samaria, and the fourth one is the uttermost. And I've shared with you how Santa Fe, Ascent Bible Church, is the product or the outcome of these guys committing to that mission. We are here today because those guys followed through on Jesus' commandments to be witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost. This morning, you're going to meet a young man whose parents have been very, very faithful to our church, Isaac and Kathy Pino. Their son, too, was faithful and committed to that mission. And he had the privilege of experiencing the uttermost here in the last few months. He just got here last Tuesday. He just came back to the States Tuesday, and he spent, Joshua, 3 months, roughly? Yeah, 3 months in Brazil, in the Amazon, in the jungles of Brazil. So this morning, we're going to hear from Joshua Pino. And we've got David Duran, our missions leader, who is going to kind of help drive the discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to ask David and Joshua to come up. And you can clap. You can definitely be a part of this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David and to Joshua Pino. This is Joshua. Thanks for being here, Josh.
Check. Is this on? Yeah. Check. Yeah, it's on. I think so. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, you can hear me, right? Okay, good. All right.
Let's see. Check. Is this working now? No?
Just talk now. Just do it.
All right.
Do it.
Check. Check, check, check.
Yeah, everybody hear him okay?
No?
I don't want to get too close.
I'm fine with the
You can hear
normal
me,
mic.
right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Will it be-
George, will we use the recording on that? It'll record? Okay, excellent. You can do that. You can give that one to David.
Thank you. Testing, testing. Okay. That's okay. We'll be all right.
I like this one better anyways.
Okay, good. Well, I'm not standing away from him because of, So, yes, this morning we are very blessed to have Joshua back with us in the States. We did have a few months ago, I don't know, was it in December when we talked with you in Hawaii?
Probably about like May.
May? Was
Yeah,
it
May or April.
Okay, it seemed like a lot longer than that to me. Okay. Okay, so you were, the last time we spoke, you were in Big Island,
Yeah.
right? So that was your preparation time, right? So how did you prepare? What was part of your preparation for going to Brazil?
So the program that I was a part of is with YWAM, and something that they like basically the opening like kind of entry level school there is called a DTS. And so I did my DTS in 2015, so I was on staff leading one of the teams there. And so we spent I was there for 6 months doing training from January to March for leadership. And then from about April to June, students from all over the world came in, and we did a lot of like training, a lot of practical things. People were just a lot of people showed up that weren't even saved, people that had never experienced God before. So people were gaining breakthrough in their own lives in areas that they had never faced before, and also being prepared on how to have a biblical worldview and go out into missions and seeing what the point of advancing the gospel really is.
Right.
So with that, we did a lot of just a lot of praying, a lot of intercession, a lot of worship, a lot of teachings. The students went through a lot of teaching, and me and my co-leader did a lot of logistical preparation as well. We had to handle tons of money, which was very intimidating. It was a lot of things. It really taught me that we're supposed to be faithful in even the small things. That going and doing all of this it's just as holy as handling all of this money, all the money that I had for my team. So it taught me really how to be faithful in all of the small things, and that's what we did during the preparation time.
Okay, great. That's good. So the people that were leading the trainings, they were experienced in the mission work and such like that. Were they from all over the world as well?
Yeah, so we had people from all over the world, speakers from all over the place, teach on different topics every week. So we had times where people taught on Holy Spirit, on life and missions. So there was a different topic every week, and it was we had a teacher every week for the DTS, and we also had school leaders in times of intercession and prayer, and a bunch of different things.
Okay, great. That's awesome, because we here in Ascent Bible Church, we have a discipleship I guess we do a lot of discipling here, and so there are 16 lessons that we go through, and that's really incredible, because it's important that we understand, the doctrines biblically and how to present them. So that's pretty amazing. So do we have the map of Brazil? Yes. We're going to show the map of Brazil, and maybe you could speak to us, show us. It's not the best
No problem. I can
picture,
see.
but
All right, cool.
so your trip started, like, maybe you could show us where it started. And
Yeah, so before we went to the Amazon, we actually spent 3 weeks in the south of Brazil, so around São Paulo. We flew in there, and we spent 3 weeks at this thing called 21 Project, which was run by this movement called Dunamis. And it's basically like a shortened DTS, about a 3-week DTS, where they teach people to really impact their sphere of society. So people that aren't necessarily called to missions, that feel called to go into business or education or different things like that. We staffed that, and from there we moved on up to the north in Belém, which is right where the mouth of the Amazon is. And we spent the rest of the outreach up there, going to different communities out in this area on the river. We went to 3 different communities up there, and that's where we spent most of our time ministering to people.
so how did you travel? Like when you were leaving the south, going to the north, was it by bus, by
We flew there. We
You
flew.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
it's
we.
a pretty big country, right?
Yeah, it was about a 3-hour flight to get there.
Okay.
3.5 hours, and then we finished our outreach in Rio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Great. So, one of my questions. So, as you went out there, as you prepared for meeting the people and such, was there a message that God put on your heart that you felt He wanted you to deliver to the people you were going to meet?
Yeah, there's actually a pretty specific, just kind of theme with our whole team. And the thing is, in the north in Brazil, where there are a lot of poor people and people in the jungles, they feel very just unseen and like not taken care of, and they feel like their government hasn't done anything to do anything about it because the government in Brazil is very, very, very corrupt. So they feel totally overlooked, and a lot of them feel like their lives don't matter, and they stay where they are for their whole lives. We went to different communities. We went to this one island in the middle of the jungle where some people never leave there, and they live to be like 90 to most people live to be 90 to 100 years old, and they never leave the island. So they feel pretty hopeless. There's just a lot of hopelessness there. And so the message that kind of came up with our team is just bringing just a message of hope. And every time we would go to a house and visit people, we would always tell them that like God still sees you, and God, he still loves you just as much as anyone else. And and just spending time with the people, just life on life discipleship, and being able to walk with them and just daily life, just really showed them that they are still seen and still cared for and still loved, and really opened the door to share the gospel.
Oh, great. So, there must have been some kind of challenge with the language, right?
Yeah.
So, where you went, did you have people who were from there that knew the language and how to speak?
Yeah. One of my co-leaders actually she's from Brazil, so she speaks Portuguese. And in the north, they speak Portuguese. It's a different dialect, but it's pretty similar.
Okay.
And we also had translators most of the time.
Okay. Okay. Great. So, that's pretty fascinating, because you're meeting these like people who have probably don't have much interaction with people from other countries. Is that kind of true?
It's true. Most of them have never seen anyone outside of Brazil, so that was actually pretty interesting that our contacts in Brazil said that the fact that foreigners would take their time to go visit them, like, it meant the world to them in the first place. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So, as you prepared and as you kind of received all this teaching, how did your faith grow? How was your faith? How did God build your faith as you were preparing for this trip, and then while you were actually out there ministering to people?
That was definitely the biggest thing that I grew in the entire time was faith, because I'm just 20-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
My co-leader was also 20 years old, and we were supposed to lead a team of 7 adults to the middle of the jungle, handle $18,000 worth of money, all of these crazy things, do all these logistics, and I'm not any holier or even necessarily that mature in my spiritual walk or anything like that, but it was a constant day-to-day thing of, okay, God, like I'm this is all you, this is all for your glory. I know if I do anything in my own strength, I'm gonna mess this whole outreach up, kind of a thing. So it was every single day. I remember waking up in my hammock, because we had to sleep in hammocks in the jungle, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing right now? But it was just really knowing that God had put me in that position, and also just trusting Him in every single moment. And even with like I said before, like even with handling money, handling visas for getting into the country, logistics, all of that was just, okay, God, this is all you. If things don't work out, I'm still gonna trust you. I know that everything that happens, like, I can trust you, and that you are still God and you're still in control. So that was something that I had to learn, especially because this time around, in my DTS, I was a student, so I went to the Middle East then, and I had leaders and I had other people. This time around, I didn't really have anyone to process with necessarily. Being out there, we didn't have cell service or anything like that, so I wasn't able to text my parents all the time. I mean, I did when I could, but it was okay. And you can't really, if you're having your own problems on outreach, you can't just start venting that to your students either. So I really had to learn to go before God in absolutely every single thing that came up. And it really, really grew my faith a lot.
Right. So was there like one particular like instance where you knew that God was like speaking to you, like one thing that happened that you could just feel that God was like, okay, you're doing what I'm asking you to do, and I'm here with you. Was there one kind of event or thing that might have happened?
So one day in the Amazon, one of my co-leaders had left, the Brazilian one. She went to visit the other outreach teams, and then my other co-leader had gotten really, really, really sick. Most of our team got like violently ill at some point, but she got so sick that she couldn't go with the team to go to the next community that we were at. So I had to lead the team by myself for about five days. And we go to this island, the island that I was talking about, and the place that we're staying at. First of all, it was super, super remote. It was the most remote place that we had been to so far, so it was pretty daunting for the whole team. And a few of the people on my team, it was like their first missions trip. Most of us were all in our early 20s. Everyone was kind of freaking out. We go to this place that we're staying at, and we stay at this house, and this Catholic lady who had 10 kids. And there was this guy that had, I guess, just murdered someone that day that was seeking asylum at the place we were staying at. So our whole team was even freaking out even more. Like, why are we here? Why are we here? This is stupid. Like, we need to go. And I was kind of overwhelmed in that moment. But the next day, the whole family asked our team just to pray for them, and a couple of them had given their lives to Jesus. And it was an amazing, like, transforming moment. And in that moment, a lot of the students on my team, like, realized why we were there.
Wow.
And it really helped even me realize, like that's the point, is to go to these people and to go to these people who are super broken, and even the ones that may seem super scary, or that's the point.
That's awesome. That's really incredible, because that would definitely, build my faith. Just seeing that's incredible. Was there like when you were reaching out to the people and sharing, praying and sharing the gospel, was there one particular part of the gospel message, or maybe a biblical story that the people could relate to, and it really touched them, and then they could, that message was what would draw them?
Yeah, I would say that the message that we used a lot was Jesus stopping for the blind man that, everyone passed, and he healed them. And it was mostly a lot of the healing stories, the people that Jesus decided to stop for and talk to and heal and save and all of that. Those were the stories that really, really impacted these people's hearts, because it, like I said, it showed them that they were still seen by God, and that God would send a group of 20-something-year-old kids all the way to the Amazon to take boats to an island, to take more boats throughout the island, just to share to them that Jesus loves them. Was that completely transformed them? Most of them, a lot of them, yeah.
What kind of practices did they have? Like, what are their religious practices other than the message that you shared with?
That was probably one of the biggest challenges. Every single place that we went in the Amazon practiced different things. So we went to 3 communities. In the first community we were at, they practiced tons and tons of witchcraft. And right across the street from the place we were staying at was the witch doctor. And at night we'd be like going to sleep, and we could hear like the drumming and the chanting from across, like just right across the street. It was actually funny because this one day we were just doing street evangelism. This is kind of a tangent, but it was a cool story. We were doing street evangelism, and me, my co-leader, and one of our students, we were just going door to door praying for people and stuff. And this was before we knew that the witch doctor was right across the street. And we go to this this house. It's beaten up old shack, and there's a bunch of people sitting outside. And my co-leader decides just to pray over them and share an encouraging word. And there's this old lady sitting on the porch, and she was praying over this old lady. And afterward, she says, "I really feel like God is telling me that you're a mother and a mother to many, and that He's really called you to be a mother." She just starts weeping, and she feels so touched. And we leave, and our translator says, "Oh, that's the witch doctor, and all of her people in her church, they call her mother." So we were like, "Oh, okay, that's kind of crazy." So we go back, and we tell them that we're Christians. Just to make it clear, they already knew that, but we really wanted to make it clear that that's what we were there for. And the lady was like, "Okay, well, I want you guys to come back into my home, and I want you guys to worship." So we go back later that night with our whole team, and we just worship, and we find out that this lady is actually, she's not a witch doctor by choice, but that's the only way that she can make money. So we just worshiped in her house. We prayed over the place. We got to share the gospel and all of that, and it was absolutely amazing. And she didn't get saved in that moment, but we still knew that God was doing a work in her heart and her family. So that was cool. But aside from that, and the other places, the island that we had gone to, there's some Christians from previous missionaries that had come, and there's tons and tons of Catholics. But the Catholics and the Christians are not civil at all. They don't talk to each other. So that was the thing that we came up against in the second place. And then in the third place that we had gone to, there were a lot of unreached people, but we also stayed at a church that was very, 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 very religious. Pretty much like a cult, to be honest. But so it was different to every single place, so it constantly kept us on our toes.
Right. Well, that's great. That's fascinating that you would run into a witch doctor and get to share the gospel message with them. That's pretty impressive. All right. So the challenges that you faced traveling from these three different places, I guess by boat and by foot, I guess, and stuff. So did what was challenging about that? Was there weather challenges and that kind of thing?
That was pretty challenging. But it was also really, really fun, especially on the island where we were in the middle of the jungle. We got to walk all over the place and take boats and go to people's houses, and they all lived along the river. And there were a couple challenges. We had the third place that we were at. You can't get to anywhere by foot, and you had to take a boat. And none of us really knew how to drive boats or anything like that.
Okay.
So, but yeah, there's a few times where it got pretty challenging. This one night in the last place that we were at, we got in a boat, this wooden boat, and it was really late at night. We were coming back from this community, and it was just our team, which was 9 of us total, and our translator, 3 of our translators, and the person driving the boat. And then we're leaving, and we notice a bunch of kids start coming, and 60 kids pile onto the boat.
Oh, wow.
And we end up getting stuck in a bay infested with piranhas and stingrays at night, and the boat's tipping. And it turned out that everyone on the team was totally fine, but me and my co-leader were panicking the most. But yeah, that was definitely challenging when you're stuck in the middle of a boat, in the middle of a bay with 70 plus people, and our engine stopped and all of this craziness. When I was graduating high school, I never thought I'd be in the middle of the boat in the middle of the Amazon stuck or anything like that.
Yeah. No, I don't think anybody could envision something like that. So these kids that came out and got on your boat, what were they wanting to do? What?
Well, they
was
were
there?
part of the church that we had just preached at,
Okay.
and they also needed to get back home, so the guy
Oh.
that was steering our boat let them all on.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. They were hitching a ride back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is really amazing. These are life events that you'll probably remember forever, I'm sure. So, does anybody here have any questions they would like to ask Josh?
Oh yeah, there were a few. We were actually didn't see too many because it wasn't the rainy season. Oh, were there any wild any wild animals? We saw snakes, really really big spiders, a few monkeys, and wild dogs, but we never saw any like I don't know.
What kind of animals would be in the jungle, like panthers?
We
wild
also saw piranhas
pigs?
too. Oh, we saw pigs. We saw really really big, huge wild pigs. Yeah, there would be. I'm not too sure to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Bobby?
Oh, I made sure not to say anything until I was back. Are people? What was that again? Sparse. Yeah, were people?
Spread about.
Yeah, spread
Yeah.
about throughout the jungle. Yeah, yeah, they were. The first place that we went to was actually a town by the river, but everywhere else, the houses would just be along the river, like just further and further down, deeper and deeper in the jungle. We didn't. There are a lot of them where I thought we were going to come into contact with a lot of tribal people, and we didn't. There are a lot of just really, really poor people that lived in the jungle, which is mostly the people that we ministered to.
Okay. Yeah, because I was kind of envisioning you would go to a village, and the village would have maybe 100, 200 people living in it, but wasn't like that.
No,
Okay.
I thought it was going to be like that too. Our team did as well.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
in third world countries like that, they tell you right before it happens what you're going to be up against. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I probably have a Hollywood vision of that kind of thing. Arlene.
Well, it definitely made. Let me repeat the question. Yeah. So she was just asking what my experience was like with the food, with the all of the houses and stuff, and comparing it to how privileged we are here in America. And I can tell you, it definitely did make me way, way more appreciative of what we have here in America. But I also feel like God gave me this just insane amount of grace to really just be fine with everything that we dealt with. But the houses there, they're like just beaten up old like wooden houses that people would just make themselves. One room, they didn't have beds, they slept in hammocks. They didn't have any showers or bathrooms usually. They just used the river, bathed in the river, used the bathroom in the river, all of that. Most of the houses had boats, and they usually just ate rice and beans or chicken. They would fish, but it wasn't a lot, and they didn't have electricity, they had well watered sometimes, and it was pretty tough for my team. Our team got completely wrecked. Their bodies were completely, we had to have a team hospital day because everyone got sick. I had one of my students got dengue fever. Our whole team got parasites from the food and the water, intestinal infections, infections in the skin. One of my students fainted in the middle of the hospital because of something that he had gotten from the middle of the jungle. So it was just all of this craziness that even having clean water, which was something that our team realized was like a complete privilege and not a right.
Mm. So, in your preparation for your trip, were these things that you kind of knew you may encounter during the time out?
No, not. I don't know. I think not really.
No, okay.
We knew. We also slept in hammocks, and I thought that was a lot of fun.
Uh-huh.
Like I knew that, and we knew that it was gonna be some sort of roughing it, but we didn't really know to what extent. And you can tend to like romanticize, like, oh, I'm gonna be in the middle of the jungle. It's gonna be so awesome. It's gonna be so cool. We're gonna live off the land, all of that. And then the second you get there, and you don't have clean water and you don't have a toilet to use, then you start panicking and you hate it and you want to leave. It's completely different. But we didn't really know too much.
Okay. So to follow along with Arlene's question, are they agricultural people at all? Do they have gardens and do they grow food?
They have these really tall trees, acai, like this fruit that is really popular in Brazil, and that's like most of them, almost every single person in the Amazon, that's how they make their money, is they sell the fruit from their trees, like mangoes, acai, papayas, and stuff like that. And then they fish and get shrimp out of the river too. So that's what they eat every single day.
I see. Okay. Okay. Bill.
Well, we saw about.
Two-part question.
Oh, okay.
How many people accepted Jesus, and did you follow up with them? What did the team do to follow up after?
We actually saw anywhere from like 90 to 100 salvations. And the thing that the Amazon base, the YWAM base in the Amazon that we were with, the translators that were with us are also long-term staff. And since they're able to communicate with them, they go back to these places where the people had gotten saved. And they take them to, the base has these church services. So a lot of them all get in a boat and they go to these church services, or they send more staff out into those places, to the houses that we had been to, and they begin a discipleship process. So it's not just like, oh, you get saved and we leave and they don't know what to do. We also gave them a lot of these audio Bibles, these SD cards, because that's kind of crazy. Like, believe it or not, even in the middle of the jungle, people still have like smartphones. That was something that we realized when I was in Jordan too, that a lot of the refugees, that's how they find their way around the Middle East, was using GPS on their phone. But that's what we did. And so a lot of the long-term YWAMers go back and they go to these places and they invest in the people that had gotten saved. And there's a lot of churches there that the YWAM base has planted. So these people don't have to go take their boats all the time. They can just go to these churches and the local churches disciple them.
Oh, okay. Roberta.
Oh yeah, that was something that we like made sure to have every single day, because otherwise our whole team would have just fallen apart. Because without that prayer, without that intercession, it would have been we wouldn't have known what we were doing. So we had we had team times every single day, so we'd spend at least an hour like just praying for the place, praying for the other outreach teams, praying for every single person that we had met and every person that we were going to meet, constantly praying. And we like made sure that each of us have our own quiet times with God, mostly in the morning, but anytime that we had the chance, we always made like we prioritized that above everything else, was having that prayer, even more than going out to these places, because there was a lot of stuff, just a lot of change going on in people's hearts, and they also needed that time to process as well and pray about it. And the food that I ate, the food our team ate, so the thing with Brazil that's kind of crazy is there's this huge I don't know what the word is, but where there's really poor people, there can be really rich people. Where there's like huts and really poor neighborhoods, there can be normal houses. And the area that we were in, there wasn't any of that. But the town that our base was in, there was like normal grocery stores and stuff. So we had to pack our food in like these big containers and take it out. I mean, there were times though where we ate the food that they ate, like chicken that was just killed, that we saw the head get cut off and stuff. Or the soup that there was pork where you could taste feel the fuzz from the pig, like the pig's skin. Well, we ate it, and that was absolutely awful. So.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Okay, another question from the. The question is, did Joshua and his team have to, get invited when they were invited into the homes of the people living there? Did they partake of the meal completely?
Yeah, so that happened often, and I think after a while, like our team just got so used to it that it just became normal. And like for me, I mean, there were a couple things that it was so hard to eat, but you just gotta do it, you know. Like that pork thing, or they have just really bitter, just like roots that they cook stuff with, and it's just so bad. But you just kind of, I don't know, that's just showing love to them too, you know. So you just kind of have to do it, and that was something that I learned in my first trip when I went to Jordan. Was you gotta have to just kind of man up and do it, you know. There were times though that we, like our translators, didn't let us eat certain things because they knew that would get us really sick. Because there was this one time we ate cake at someone's house and our whole team got like insanely sick for 2 days.
Wow.
But we had to, that was something we had to do pretty often. And I mean, it's just part of the territory, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Okay, Nico.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. It was. Were there a lot of scenic views? Yeah, it was so beautiful there. It was probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. I don't. Michelle.
Yeah, there was a level of she was asking if I had any experiences with the government there, with the police, with it being corrupt and whatnot. Not so much. We did have a couple times when we were in Rio where we had run-ins with the police for no reason. That they tend to stop foreigners and whatnot, but it was kind of ridiculous. But the police there was pretty corrupt. They especially in the cities and whatnot. But we didn't really have too many run-ins with the government or any issues like that. It was definitely hard when we were in Rio specifically. We were only there for a week, just debriefing our trip, and seeing how there are these huge skyscrapers right next to these poor neighborhoods, like these incredibly poor neighborhoods. And because of that, we always had to kind of watch our back because the crime rate is super, super high. Because a lot of the people in Rio and Sao Paulo, they steal because it's the only way they can make their money, and we can't trust the police because they're also super corrupt there as well. And the military is also very corrupt as well. So it's kind of everyone fend for themselves. Everyone walks with their backpack in the front.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Kathy, you have a question.
The worship was what was the worship in the churches like there? The worship in the churches is always different. There were times where we got to lead worship, but times we didn't. It wasn't like, I guess, the best by like American standards or anything, but that was also something that our team had to get used to. It was mostly like the pastor would be the singer, the worship leader as well, and they would have maybe a guitar or two. It was actually a lot of fun, though, to be honest. It was like a lot of off-pitch singing, a lot of just all songs you never heard of in Portuguese, but it was it was cool. And two of the Korean girls on my team, they both learned 12 songs in Portuguese.
Wow.
Worship leaders, and after a while, they're the ones that were always getting asked to lead worship in the churches.
That's awesome. Well, how much more time do we have, John? 2 minutes? Okay. Okay, Anna?
Yeah, she was.
The question.
Yeah. So the question is, how did we bathe, and how did we wash our clothes, and if I've kept in touch with anyone from either of my trips from the Middle East or Brazil. And it always was different every community we had, like, it was different experience with washing clothes and bathing and whatnot. First one that we went to, we had showers. The water there was also very brown. It got worse each place we went to. It's usually just a shower head that's like connected with the river water, so you just might as well just bathe in the river. It's just water's coming out of a shower head, so it's probably easier. We didn't really wash our clothes when we were in the jungle, because we would go to these communities and then we would go back to the YWAM base for 1 or 2 days. That's where we would wash our clothes. So I would just make sure to pack like a lot. That way I would just never run out, and then I would wash when I would get back because I didn't want to use that water. And then the second place we went to was just well water. We had to take bucket showers out of the well, and then the third place was just straight up just bathe in the river.
Well,
the second question, sorry. Yeah, there are a few people, not so much the Amazon, because I can't really have contact with many of them, just because a lot of them don't have like they can't really communicate. Their phones are good for calling people in their area, and that's pretty much it. But from the 21 project part that we did for the first 3 weeks in Brazil, in Sao Paulo in the south, I still keep in contact with a lot of friends there. In Jordan, there's still a few people I talk to every now and again. You know, a lot of my Muslim friends will text me and they'll be like, "Hey, how are you doing? Like, how's life?" And I get to text them back, and it's a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Well, you've shared a lot with us, and we really appreciate what you are doing out in the world and to reach these people. And it sure gives me a deep appreciation for where we live and the conveniences and the luxuries that we live in, even though we may not have a lot of wealth ourselves, but we certainly have a lot more than what's out in the world. And sure appreciate that, Josh, that you shared that. You went out there and you did that, and then you come back and share that with us. So God bless you. And I think our time is up, and so give Josh a big round of applause. Thank you.
Is that awesome or what? Thank you, Joshua Pino. What a blessing. Speaking of cake, we have a cake for Joshua in the back, so nobody leave. It's Helen baked it, so it should be okay. So I don't think we'll get sick, right, Helen? But Joshua Pino, we just want to welcome you back home. God bless you. We love you. Thank you for sharing your mission. What a blessing. Is that the uttermost or what? Right? The uttermost of the uttermost. And my thought, my take home for today is if those Portuguese pastors could lead praise, then so can I. So from here on out, all right, Joshua. I'll tell you what, it was our blessing, Joshua. It was worth every penny, man, because what an investment. Thank you, man, to see 300 people come to Christ. Was that the number I heard? 100, man. What a blessing. If one person would have come to Christ, it was worth every second of your time and every penny that was invested. But again, thank you all. Kalani, you want to close us with a word, with a song? Do you have a song you want to close with? If not, we can just pray.